and with a fledgling jute business has burgeoned into a mammoth enterprise, participating in a nation's perpetual efforts to create a better world and a promising future for its people. GMR, creating tomorrow, today.
First time in India?
नहीं, दूसरी बार.
Incredible India.
तुम मेरी दुनिया सजाती हो, घर को घर बनाती हो. कभी हमको सिखाती हो, कभी खुद भूल जाती हो. घर को घर बनाती हो. कभी नखरे उठाती हो, कभी हौसला बढ़ाती हो. तुम हर पल को स्पेशल बनाती हो. घर को घर बनाती हो.
हम सिर्फ घर बनाते हैं, आप उसमें खुशियां बसाते हैं. सुपरटेक.
People. 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 That's it. We love technology, but only if it makes life less complicated for people. We work hard to come up with new ways of making our cars less of a burden to our planet. Because this planet is home for people. When it comes to safety, we are the world's most innovative car brand. Always have been, always will be. Because that saves the lives of people. Some say cars are all about going fast. Some say cars are all about looking cool. They aren't wrong, but our main passion is to help our drivers and their loved ones to live longer, to help them take responsibility for the world around them, and to help them live a life less complicated. Cars are driven by people. And that's why we designed them around you.
A sign can say, I'm yours. A sign can say, you're mine. A sign can say, I am here. sign can say, I am there. A sign can say, it's time to fight. A sign can say, enough is enough. A sign can stay silent, or a sign can speak. Parker, the sign that speaks.
ग से गमला, च से चरखा, ज से झंडा, दो एक दो, ए फॉर एप्पल, दो चौपाट, क से कबूतर, सी फॉर कार, 4+1, ख से खरगोश, 2 दो एक दो, दो दूनी चार, दो दिया 6, दो चौक 8, दो पंजे 10, घ से घड़ी.
Every time you pick up Hindustan Times, you contribute towards sending a child to school.
What if a newspaper could make your city cleaner? What if a newspaper could solve your traffic woes? What if a newspaper could switch on a street light? What if a newspaper could make you feel safer? Let's raise issues. Let's solve issues. Hindustan Times. Let's make news better. Aditya Birla Group, taking India to the world.
बहुत अच्छा.
India, incredible India.
The beginning of a dream, a commitment to the creation of a better society. The GMR Group, an organization established with the pervasive vision to build entrepreneurial organizations.
check, check, hello, check, test, test, check, hello, check, test, check, test.
Check this one. Check this one. Check one.
Aditya Birla Group, taking India to the world.
The beginning of a dream, a commitment to the creation of a better society. The GMR Group, an organization established with the pervasive vision to build entrepreneurial organizations that make a difference to society through creation of value. A group driven by values and beliefs. The quest that began with a fledgling jute business has burgeoned into a mammoth enterprise, participating in a nation's perpetual efforts to create a better world and a promising future for its people. GMR, creating tomorrow, today.
Saluting the ambassadors of Brand India, who lead 1 billion believers, shape the nation's future, shine on the global stage, and inspire a generation with their leadership. GMR presents CNN IBN Indian of the Year 2013 in partnership with Hindustan Times.
UPA's fortunes are set to decline.
NDA will go up to 270 seems to be losing ground.
Some of the figures on Karnataka, Rajasthan might be a bit exaggerated.
ये मैं, ये यूसुफ, लंगोटिया यार सी मेरा। लाहौर में हमारे घर के सामने एक बड़ा बाग था। उस बाग का गेट बाबा आदम के जमाने। रोज शाम को हमने वहां पतंगे उड़ानी और उसके बाद जाके यूसुफ की दुकान से झझरिया चुरा के खानी।
झझरिया?
और मेरा साहब नमस्ते।
नमस्ते। मेरी पोती मुंबई वाली।
और बेटे क्या हाल चाल है?
बचपन की तंग गली फिर से कूद फांदे, छोटी छोटी मीठी चोरी गांठ लेके बांधे।
हेलो अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
फाजिल स्वीट्स?
हाँ जी। दादाजान, दिल्ली से किसी की कॉल है।
हेलो,
यूसुफ अंकल?
कौन?
जी मैं सुमन बोल रही हूँ दिल्ली से, आपके बचपन के दोस्त बलदेव जी की पोती। याद है बचपन में आप दोनों झझरिया चुरा के खाते थे?
बचपन की तंग गली फिर से कूद फांदे, छोटी छोटी मीठी चोरी गांठ लेके बांधे। एक पतंग सा उड़ता था परिंदों की तरह, परिंदों की तरह, परिंदों की तरह। एक दौर था मन मन मोर था, एक दौर था मन मन मोर था।
पार्टीशन के वक्त हम रातों रात हिंदुस्तान आ गए।
दादू?
यूसुफ दी बड़ी आजादी।
कागजों की कश्तियों में डूबा रहता था, झांकती खिड़कियों में उलझा रहता था। वो भी क्या दौर था, मन पे न जोर था। एक दौर था मन मन मोर था, एक दौर था मन मन मोर था।
भैया थोड़ा जल्दी।
हाँ जी, कौन? हैप्पी बर्थडे यारा। यूसुफ वो यूसुफ मेरे पल्लू यूसुफ है यार।
वो रोशनी जो बनाए आपका भविष्य और उज्जवल। हम हैं ONGC।
तुम मेरी दुनिया सजाती हो, घर को घर बनाती हो। कभी हमको सिखाती हो, कभी खुद भूल जाती हो। घर को घर बनाती हो, कभी नखरे उठाती हो। कभी हौसला बढ़ाती हो तुम हर पल को स्पेशल बनाती हो घर को घर बनाती हो
हम सिर्फ घर बनाते हैं, आप उसमें खुशियां बसाते हैं। सुपरटेक।
Life is made up of countless journeys. Some short, some long, some of epic proportions.
Check. Hello. Check.
Our journey
Test.
with you through the years has been an amazing one. Our journeys are rarely made alone. Our journeys are shared with those we care about. But sometimes we meet new acquaintances along the way who embrace you for who you are. That lend you comfort, give you courage, joy, and lasting memories. The very things that make every journey amazing. On this journey called life, we believe that everyone is a traveler, waiting to make that great trip with someone. And those who have walked with us, we still remember till this day. At Malaysia Airlines, our journey is made even more remarkable when it's with people like you. What we've achieved couldn't have been done without our partners. Here at Malaysia Airlines, we are one team working together across the world. And now, through the One World Network, your journey is more seamlessly connected than ever to every corner of the world. To some 800 destinations across 150 countries, with more to come. Our journey as a company allows us to meet other like-minded partners who share our vision. As we look to the future, we're taking on a new journey with you. To us, journeys should never be a lonesome pursuit. Journeys are meant to be shared. Journeys are made by the people you travel with.
because this planet is home for people. When it comes to safety, we are the world's most innovative car brand. Always have been, always will be, because that saves the lives of people. Some say cars are all about going fast. Some say cars are all about looking cool. They aren't wrong, but our main passion is to help our drivers and their loved ones to live longer, to help them take responsibility for the world around them, and to help them live a life less complicated. Cars are driven by people. And that's why we designed them around you.
National Buildings Construction Corporation Limited, a leading central public sector undertaking in the construction sector today, and an ISO 9001 company, began its journey in November 1960 as a wholly owned Government of India enterprise. Beginning with a turnover of 52,000 rupees, the corporation, with the passage of time, established itself as a dedicated partner in the progress of the nation by delivering countless important, diversified and intricate government projects all over the country.
NBCC presently working in three sectors, primarily in project management consultancy, real estate and infrastructure in power sector. Last year NBCC's turnover was 3600 crore with a profit of 290 crores. This year our target is 4000 crore and profit will be more than 300 crore. Recently, Government of India has granted Mini Ratna status to NBCC, and our next target will be to achieve Navratna, which we are targeting in next 3 to 4 years.
Consistently excellent performance of NBCC over the last many years has earned it many milestones and recognitions from the government. These recognitions include Schedule A status, one among top 10 central public sector undertakings, winning of CSR award, winning excellence awards from the Honorable Prime Minister of India, and the third most profitable construction company of the country award 2008. The latest feather in its cap is the Mini Ratna status, granted to it by the Government of India in September 2012. In accordance with government directives, the Board of Directors had recommended a dividend of 35% on the paid-up equity share capital, and the cheque amounting to 37.80 crore rupees towards 90% of equity share capital held by the government was received by the Honorable Union Minister of Urban Development on the 1st of October 2012. All the projects undertaken by NBCC are spread all across the states and union territories of India. Jammu and Kashmir. Gujarat.
There are 2 huge hostels at Surat with 800 rooms in the PG girls hostel and 920 rooms in the boys hostel.
Karnataka. Tamil Nadu. Bihar, West Bengal, Tripura, Assam, Sikkim, Delhi. NBCC has also undertaken several overseas projects in Iraq, Nepal, Yemen, Maldives, Mauritius, Botswana, Libya, and Turkey, among others. Presently, NBCC, in addition to execution of various diversified projects, is also engaged in implementation of projects for the Central Paramilitary Forces through the Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India. NBCC has also constructed NSG regional hubs at Kolkata, Chennai, Hyderabad, and Mumbai.
The NSG hub has been provided with comprehensive modern facilities for NSG officials like married accommodation, barracks, STPs, solar light panels, and also it provides total training facilities for the NSG personnel.
NBCC is our premier organization in construction sector. It has worked not only in India but all over the world, in various parts of India, nook and corner, from north to south, east to west, in smallest of the states and in the biggest ones also. The strength of the NBCC lies in integrated development, which includes not only the building proper but its surrounding. It takes care of the heritage issues, the environmental issues, and social issues with equal emphasis on all these components.
NBCC believes that corporate responsibilities go beyond the financial to non-financial areas such as community development and nation building. Accordingly, NBCC has adopted a policy to undertake social welfare activities in areas adjoining its project sites and offices in the country so as to produce an overall positive impact on society. Being an extended arm of the Ministry of Urban Development, NBCC is executing infrastructure development projects in the Northeast region, Indo-Pak and Indo-Bangla border fencing works for the Ministry of Home Affairs, also road works under Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, and many more.
Now NBCC's thrust is to construct more and more green buildings which are friendly in way of solar energy as well as environmental friendly buildings. Now all the buildings and construction which NBCC is undertaking are on either GRIHA or LEED certification.
IICA building is the first government green building in Millennium City of Gurgaon to receive IGBC's gold rating and also the first certified green building ever constructed by NBCC.
With limited scope for energy conservation in the service sector, NBCC lays emphasis on techniques resulting in conservation of energy by making use of solar energy and undertaking construction of energy-efficient and environment-friendly buildings. Sewage treatment plants executed by using upflow anaerobic sludge blanket technology and execution of solid waste management projects at various places of the country are some of the major initiatives being pursued by the corporation in the environment sector. NBCC's vision is to be a widely admired and preferred construction services company. NBCC has diversified into almost all fields of construction sector, including highly specialized works like water treatment and sewage treatment plants, flyovers, roadworks, mass housing projects, offices and institutions, hospitals, EPC projects, and solid waste management projects. residential and commercial real estate, and power sector works are now major focus areas for NBCC. One company is leaving an indelible mark on India's energy landscape, creating state-of-the-art LNG infrastructure, expanding capacities at the H terminal, commissioned its second LNG terminal at Kochi, with the first LNG cargo received at Kochi on 20th of August 2013. Pre-project activities started for next LNG terminal at Gangavaram, Andhra Pradesh, unleashing the true potential of liquefied natural gas. Meeting the ever-rising demand for a clean, green energy source. Participation in solid cargo ports through joint venture. Shipping. Venturing into power generation. Harnessing the potential of cold energy. Continuously rising in rankings among top 100 companies. With sustainable development and caring for the community. All made possible by a professional workforce, encompassing all worlds with excellence. Petronet LNG Limited, shaping the dream of clean and green India.
देश के हर कोने तक बिजली पहुंचाते हम, पावर ग्रिड है हम। दृढ़ निश्चय अटल इरादे कभी ना होंगे कम, प्रगति की राहों पर बिजली पहुंचाते हम, पावर ग्रिड है।
Power Grid Corporation of India Limited, a Navratna company.
सूरज जब जब घर को लौटा, हर घर को रोशन कर दिया। जब उम्मीदों की लौ मत्थम हुई, दर दर को रोशन कर दिया। हमने कल को रोशन कर दिया। उम्मीदों के गलियारों में हर चेहरा दमकता रहे, सूरज चाहे घर को लौटे, भारत अपना चमकता रहे। एनटीपीसी, एक महारत्न कंपनी।
जब स्वास्थ्य का दीपक जलता हो, शिक्षा का सूर्य चमकता हो, हर घर का ऊंचा नाम रहे, तो रोशन हिंदुस्तान रहे। जब रोजगार के अवसर हो, जीवन का हर पल बेहतर हो, खुशहाल हर इंसान रहे, तो रोशन हिंदुस्तान रहे। सुनहरे कल की चाह पर, हर चेहरे पर मुस्कान रहे, तो रोशन हिंदुस्तान
एनटीपीसी, एक महारत्न कंपनी।
फलक में बिछी ये सितारों की चादर, हरा के ये सुंदर नजारों की झालर, बहारों की बहती हवाओं सी निर्मल, ज़मीं की हरी भरी अनमोल धरोहर, इनकी चमक को बढ़ाते हैं हम, फिजा को सजाते जगमगाते हैं हम, हवाओं को स्वच्छ बनाते हैं हम, जल की निर्मलता बढ़ाते हैं हम, प्रदूषण घटाएं हरियाली बढ़ाएं, वो पौधों की गलियां बसाते हैं हम, मिट्टी का कर्ज चुकाते हैं हम, एनटीपीसी महारत्न कहलाते हैं हम, एनटीपीसी महारत्न कहलाते हैं हम।
There is one company working tirelessly towards a better tomorrow, spreading green energy, contributing to power needs, helping the agricultural sector, touching millions of lives. This continuous contribution over the past 28 years enables Asia's #1 gas utility to become India's youngest Maharatna, GAIL India Limited.
sign can say, I'm yours. A sign can say, you're mine. A sign can say, I am here. A sign can say, I am there. A sign can say, it's time to fight. A sign can say, enough is enough. A sign can stay silent, or a sign can speak. Parker, the sign that speaks.
G से गमला, च से चरखा, ज से झंडा, 2 1 2, A for apple, 2 चौक 8, क से कबूतर, C for car, 4 + 1, ख से खरगोश, 2
Ladies and gentlemen, if you can hear me in Shah Jahan, may I request you to please move to Darbar and take your seats. Those of you who finished with lunch, may I request you to please move to Darbar. Thank you.
Every time you pick up Hindustan Times, you contribute towards sending a child to school.
What if a newspaper could make your city cleaner? What if a newspaper could solve your traffic woes? What if a newspaper could switch on a street light? What if a newspaper could make you feel safer? Let's raise issues. Let's solve issues. Hindustan Times. Let's make news better.
Aditya Birla Group, taking India to the world.
The beginning of a dream, a commitment to the creation of a better society. The GMR Group, an organization established with the pervasive vision to build entrepreneurial organizations that make a difference to society through creation of value. A group driven by values and beliefs. The quest that began with a fledgling jute business has burgeoned into a mammoth enterprise, participating in a nation's perpetual efforts to create a better world and a promising future for its people. GMR, creating tomorrow, today.
Saluting the ambassadors of Brand India.
Ladies and gentlemen, please settle down. A reminder to kindly keep mobile phones switched off or in the silent mode. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the post-lunch session where we have the summit debate on better dictators than elected Islamists. Speaking for the motion are Dr. Daniel Pipes, President, Middle East Forum, Douglas Murray, Associate Director, Henry Jackson Society. Speaking against the motion are Mr. M.K. Bhadrakumar, former Indian ambassador, and Roger Cohen, columnist, The New York Times. In the chair, Jonathan Friedland, columnist, The Guardian.
Hello again. I hope you've had a good lunch. And we're in for some lively post-lunch action up here, I very much hope. So we have an hour or so to debate a question which certainly I think presses in on this region and around the world. The motion before us is better dictators than elected Islamists. That's the motion we're going to be debating. As I said yesterday, we'll be debating it in the traditional formal style. I won't repeat my imperial joke about Oxford Union style, but you know the format. To summarize, I'll introduce all of our four stellar speakers, all of whom have a great authority on this subject. I'll introduce them one by one. They'll make a speech of 7 or 8 minutes from the lectern there. When they're running out of time, I will ping the glass here, which you'll know means, and they'll know means they're coming towards the end. Once we've heard from all of them, we're going to open it up to the floor, and I'm going to take questions in groups. It really will help all of us if you can get straight to the question. Sometimes it's tempting to give a full life history before the question, and it certainly would, if we had 4 or 5 hours, make it more enjoyable, but with only 1 hour, get straight to the question, and that way we'll all get more debate in. After we've done that, we're going to bring it back here for closing remarks, and then we will do a final vote. But before we start, it would be good to get a sense of the room, a sense of where all of you are on this issue, a pre-vote, if you like. So I'm going to do that now. Just to say again about the importance of this question, it is obviously a live issue, and we heard it there from the former Secretary of State, Condoleezza Rice, this morning. It's one that has preoccupied foreign policy makers in a very direct way in the case of Egypt or Gaza or Tunisia, where there have been elected Islamists, but it obviously has a very direct resonance here, given the country we referred to this morning as your neighbour next door. So I would like to see a show of hands on this motion. This House believes that better dictators than elected Islamists. Who is in favour of that proposition, that it's better to have dictators rather than elected Islamists? So we are seeing a smattering of hands, I would say perhaps a dozen at most. Let's then see who is opposed to the motion, better dictators than elected Islamists. Who believes that proposition is wrong? That means, therefore, how many of you are as yet undecided? Okay, and then I think we've got a very large and overwhelming majority for my favourite question, those of you who refuse to show your hands in any exercise of this kind. That's the commanding majority. All right, so I think the room is positive in the sense that its mind has not yet been made up, so the work is there all to do to our four speakers. So let's get on and introduce them, and I'm going to do that one by one as we take them. So our first speaker for the motion that it is better to have dictators than elected Islamists is a historian, writer and commentator, president at the Middle East Forum, nominated by former President George W. Bush to serve on the Institute of Peace. It's been said by the New York Times that among his supporters, our first speaker enjoys heroic status. Among his detractors, he is reviled. Our first speaker for the motion, please welcome Daniel Pipes.
Thank you and good afternoon. Of course, I agree with this motion. Saying better dictators than elected Islamists is like saying better to have dictators than elected Nazis. Islamists are the new barbarians. Like Nazis and communists of old, these are the totalitarians, the evil people, the barbaric movements of modern times. And they have done untold damage to Muslims and non-Muslims alike. To step back, there are three types of government in modern times. They're democracies, they're personal dictatorships, and they're ideological dictatorships. Obviously, democracies are the best in terms of peace, civil rights, economic development. Personal dictatorships are execrable. There's nothing good to say about them. They're greedy. The rulers are violent, arbitrary, and unjust. Nothing good to say about them except that they're better than ideological dictatorships. Ideological dictatorships have a greater reach, do more damage, are more ambitious. So, for example, the Tsars of Russia were awful, but they sure looked good in comparison with the Soviets who followed. The Kuomintang in China was pretty awful, but a whole lot better than the Mao Zedong era that followed. The dictators of Afghanistan have been terrible, but they're better than the Taliban. Musharraf of Pakistan was pretty awful, but better than a Jamaat-e-Islami government should one come to power. Also, it is more easy to change a personal dictatorship than an ideological dictatorship. Now, all of this is clear, except that the Islamists are clever. And unlike the Nazis and communists, they have developed a democratic patina, a democratic pretense. And they present themselves as people of the political process and political participation. Jamaat-e-Islami, Muslim Brotherhood, and in Turkey the AKP all follow this rule book of saying, we're Democrats, we're playing by democratic rules. But they never are. Even when they're elected, they never are. So, for example, in Egypt, Mohamed Morsi came to power in mid-2012. By mid-2013, he was gone because he was, in fact, an aspiring dictator. They appear to be Democrats, but in fact, they're ideological tyrants. Elected Islamists are, in fact, elected autocrats. Same thing in Turkey, though more slowly. Recep Tayyip Erdogan was elected in 2002, and by now, in 2013, he has shown his autocratic ways domestically and internationally. Now, the assumption I'm making is that nonviolent Islamists and violent Islamists all seek the same thing in the end, and that same thing is application of Islamic law in a severe and complete way, and creation of a caliphate that is all-encompassing, includes everyone, Muslim and non-Muslim alike. The goal is a Shari order, the Islamic law, or as Zil Haq put it in Pakistan, Nizami Mustafa. I believe our guidelines should be that to lead to real democracy, we should always oppose the Islamists. They are the enemy of democracy, of freedom, of economic growth. We should always oppose those Muslims who are liberal, secular, democratic, and who don't want Islamist Sharia rule. And we should push the dictators, the personal, greedy dictators, to open up, to become more civilized. I believe that the non- or anti-Islamist Muslims are the great hope of the Muslim world. If the Muslim world is to leave the troubles it now has, it will do so because of these people who are visible in the streets of Pakistan and the Middle East who are anti-Islamist. In conclusion, I'd like to note two recent statements. One, an important study in the United Kingdom called Tackling Extremism in the UK, report by the Prime Minister's Task Force, in which it says the ideology of Islamic extremism is a distinct ideology which should not be confused with traditional religious practice. It is an ideology which is based on a distorted interpretation of Islam which betrays Islam's peaceful principles. No, that's wrong. Islamism does not betray Islam. Islamism builds on core principles of Islam, but takes them to an extreme and uses violence So, for example, if one could say that democratic socialists and Naxalites have the same ideas, but they're using very different means. Or in the environmental movement, those who use peaceful and violent means have the same notions, but they're using different tactics. The key difference here are tactical ones, not ideological ones, not the goal. The goal is the same: application of Islamic law, creation of an Islamic order. And then yesterday, Prime Minister Singh said, the objective of an Islamist terror attack in India is to cause hate, to use such killing to create mutual distrust between peoples of different faiths. He went on, creating communal tension, communal conflict, and communal divisions in India is the ultimate objective of terrorism, unquote. I disagree. The goal is not to sow mistrust and communal tension. It is the imposition of Islamic law. And I think it's very important to understand this. It is important not to deny reality, but to face facts. My message in conclusion is brief. Islamism is both the greatest obstacle to Muslim progress and the greatest threat to non-Muslims. Ugly as it is, personal dictatorship is less of a problem and therefore preferable. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, and the first speaker against the motion, and remember that says better dictators than elected Islamists, the first speaker against the motion is a correspondent who covered the Middle East extensively, covered the Balkan Wars extensively, and now a columnist on the New York Times, whose Global View column is a must-read in capitals around the world. Crucially for our purposes, he covered and wrote extensively on the so-called Arab Spring, reporting from Cairo and elsewhere. Speaking against the motion, please welcome Roger Cohen.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just say at the outset that to lump the AKP in Turkey, a moderate party of Islamist inspiration, with some Pakistani terrorist group and say that all of these are really either explicit or closet Nazis, that strikes me as intellectually dishonest, to say the least. Now, to me, there's something very troubling about this notion. Look at it this way. Here in the world's largest democracy, home to some 180 million Muslims, about 10% of the total global Muslim population, on the day after the death of a man, Nelson Mandela, who became the conscience of the world by standing up for the disenfranchised of South Africa and accepting democratic give and take with his former white tormentors, you, ladies and gentlemen, are being asked to accept the idea that the best one can hope for, the best form of government for the Muslims of the Arab world, who are some 20% of the global total, is dictatorship. That idea, ladies and gentlemen, is not realpolitik. It's the politics of a shriveled soul. It's the skewed Weltanschauung of the past. You're being asked to believe that there's something in the Arab genome that means such Paleolithic figures as Bashar al-Assad, Mubarak, Gaddafi, Ben Ali, and the rest of them, with their fierce repression of political opponents, their personality cults, their cronyism, their nepotism, their contempt for the rule of law, their quashing of a free press, their disappeared, their farcical elections, and the Mukhabarat security services prying into your bedrooms are or were the best that Arabs can hope for, and that free and fair elections for them are just a waste of time. And Daniel Pipes just suggested that these very men could lead us down the avenue of reform. I find that idea preposterous. Not for these people the consent of the governed, of which Condoleezza Rice spoke eloquently earlier. Okay, our opponents will say, Assad, speaking of Nazis, has gassed his own people, and a third of Syrians have fled their homes. Mubarak tortured his. Gaddafi was so consumed with his own personality cult that he wouldn't even let the names of footballers be pronounced during games on TV in case they became stars and in some way eclipsed his name. At least these guys were not the I word. They were not Islamists. In Sidi Bouzid, in Tahrir Square, in Benghazi, I witnessed the great stirring against despotism that was the Arab Spring. Three things. First, this movement was about agency, about Arabs feeling for the first time in their lives that their actions could make a difference. Second, it was about the modern world, so visible on the TV and digital networks throughout the region, and the Arab desire to be part of it. Hollywood, Bollywood, Schmollywood, give me my share. I tweet and I Facebook, therefore I am. And third, it was about a new mindset. My country is not the fiefdom of some tyrant doling out sweet cell phone and real estate deals to his nephews with zero accountability and plenty of zeros in his Swiss bank account. These ideas, ladies and gentlemen, are not going away. The genie is out the bottle. A counter-revolution may be underway, but the Arab world is not going back into the Western buttress deep freeze spawned during the Cold War. Interconnectedness cannot stop at Cairo's gates. Well, better dictators than elected Islamists, say our opponents. Better for whom? Better for the citizens of these nations? I think not. Look at Syria, devastated. Look at oil-rich Libya, fractured. Look at Egypt, tossed this way and that. All societies in the grip or living the painful legacy of dictatorships that set secularists, whatever exactly they may be, in societies where everyone is a believer, against Islamists, and use that battle as their raison d'etre. So if not better for their citizens, presumably these dictators are better for the West, better because a bulwark against radical or violent Islamism, because stable. That must be our opponent's conviction. Really? Ladies and gentlemen, far from bullocks against extremist Islamism, these dictatorships have been factories producing it. Where did Mohammed Atta, the mastermind of 9/11, come from? Mubarak's Egypt, his cohorts, Saudi Arabia. Where are jihadis currently congregating? Assad's Syria. From where did a lot of the jihadis in Iraq come? Gaddafi's Libya. As Rahul Gandhi put it to me last night at that delightful cocktail, what are you to expect from societies where the only place political components can gather is the mosque? Benjamin Barber, the US political theorist, says, fundamentalism is religion under siege. Where did the jihadis not come from? Turkey, where the closest approximation to a liberal order in a Middle Eastern Muslim state exists. That, I suggest, ladies and gentlemen, is the region's core future challenge, finding an open model that reconciles Islam and modernity, religion with non-sectarian statehood. Now, I don't wish to underestimate this challenge. Political Islam is often at odds with democracy because it places the font of authority in God, not the people. Its view on the place of women, on minorities, on religious and sexual freedoms is often problematic. And it's not for nothing that the most promising democratic transition since the Arab Spring has been in Tunisia, where the strongest civil society and the most openness to the outside world existed. Even there have been problems. But in Tunisia, the essential quest for consensus continues. Breakdown has not occurred. Of course, in Egypt, it did. Morsi's election, with 51.7% of the vote, the Brotherhood's emergence from suppression into the political arena, a US-trained Egyptian general saluting a Brotherhood president, these were seminal moments. Then Morsi made grave mistakes, and Egypt's squabbling liberals decided freedom and democracy were just fine, so long as they didn't hand power to the Brotherhood. And they and the army were not prepared to wait 3 years to throw Morsi and the Brotherhood out at the ballot box. You know the rest: Sisi's coup that will not breathe its name, slaughter in the streets of Cairo, dismantlement of the Brotherhood. Familiar script. Ladies and gentlemen, the suppression of Islamism is not the answer to Islamism. It breeds it as surely as chickens make eggs. Now, in conclusion, it's 2 years since Sidi Bouzid, Tahrir, Benghazi. But remember that in Turkey there's been 90 years of back and forth since Ataturk imposed his secular state. It takes a long time for the balance to be found. And if the Arab Spring is a 5-act play, we have only seen Act 1. But dictators are not better for the citizens of Muslim societies. Our opponents, in conclusion, are putting their faith in past failure. And as Einstein noted, insanity is doing the same thing again and again and expecting different results. And as Mandela himself observed, without democracy there cannot be peace. Our opponent's position, ladies and gentlemen, dishonors the fundamental faith in a shared humanity that stands at the core of Mandela's legacy. And you, I suggest, should reject it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. The second speaker for the motion that better dictators than elected Islamists is a writer and broadcaster, rarely off the screens in his native Britain, Associate Director of the Henry Jackson Society. He is the author of Neoconservatism, Why We Need It, and also the author of Islamophilia, a very metropolitan malady. Our next speaker, please welcome Douglas Murray.
Well, thank you very much, Jonathan. It's a great pleasure to be here. This is my first time in India, and I've had the most terrific week here. And when the organizers asked me, I think in the summer or so, if I would come and do a debate, I said absolutely. They didn't say what it was about at that stage, but I said if I get a chance to come to India for the first time, I'd be willing to argue for the devil. And here I find myself. So thank you to the organisers. Look, this isn't an easy motion to defend. I'd have been, in any case, slightly troubled, since we're doing a vote by show of hands, if the whole hall had put up their hands to say that you're in favour of dictators. It wouldn't have been likely then. I hope it's slightly more likely when you've finished hearing Dr. Pipes and my arguments. Perhaps I should, however, just correct 2 points. One is just to state again, as Dr. Pipes already has, our side is not in favour of dictators. I am not pro-dictator. I've seen the torture chambers of Saddam Hussein. I have friends who were in the torture chambers of Hosni Mubarak. I've lost colleagues into the torture chambers of Bashar al-Assad. I have no sympathy or liking for these people. Our side is not saying, contra Mr. Cohen's point just now, that we are saying that dictators are the best option. We are explicitly not saying that. The motion is between dictators and elected Islamists. I can assure you, ladies and gentlemen, that if we had been offered as a motion, elected Islamists or dictators versus moderate, liberal, progressive Muslims, I can assure you we'd have been on the side of the latter. It's just that that's not what was on the scorecard today. It's a slightly harder argument we're up against, so please let's not try to simplify it. There are, getting down to brass tacks, there are, broadly speaking, two types of Islamist governments that have emerged in recent years. Those that go very fast and those that go very slow. Among the very fastest, for instance, are the Hamas in Gaza. They didn't wait any time at all. They started to throw their opponents off the tops of buildings, shot them in the back, immediately started to institute hudud punishments in the Gaza, and so on. Hamas, you could say, are elected Islamists who went very fast indeed. In Egypt, the regime of Morsi was fairly swift in the effort it took and in the moves it took part in to try to instill its own vision, its own, I think, catastrophic vision of Islamist governance on Egypt, and was thrown out as a result. But it is not nothing that the Morsi administration, for instance, just before it was toppled by the military, instituted as the governor of Luxor, one of the people involved in the terrorist group that carried out the massacre of tourists in Luxor in the 1990s. It is things like that that turn people rightly against such elected Islamists. There are slowly Islamists. Erdogan of Turkey has already been cited by both sides. But again, it isn't nothing now that Turkey has more journalists in prison than any other country in the world, including China. There are cases of other slower Islamists, Ennahda in Tunisia being one example. But let me get on to the, as it were, positive case. Roger Cohen rightly just now said, better for whom? Let me explain to you in my remaining minutes why dictators are better than elected Islamists, both externally, that is for the international community, and indeed for the people in the countries they purport to run. Firstly, in terms of security, and I mean, maybe there will be a difference of opinion in this hall on this, but as Dr. Pipes has already said, would a Pakistan run by Musharraf, undoubtedly not a Democrat, as I or you would view it, undoubtedly not a Democrat, but would Pakistan be safer in this region, and would people in this region and the wider world feel safer about a Pakistan run by Musharraf and the military, horrible as all of that is, or by a Pakistan run by Jamaat? I would submit it would be the former, not the latter. And you can do the same exercise elsewhere. For all his horror, was Egypt under Mubarak more stable for the international community as well as the region than Morsi? Is Sisi more stable for the region than Morsi? Again, despite everything against him, I would submit obviously yes. Let me get on finally then to the internal dimension. Because one of the things about elected Islamists is that they are a catastrophe for the people they purport to govern. And I will give you 3 reasons very quickly in the time I have remaining. First of all, and since Mandela has already been cited, let me cite him as well. One of the things that Mandela showed was the importance of whatever the historical grievances, of not carrying out persecution or condemnation for those grievances once you get into power against a minority, whatever your arguments against them. He showed that for everyone. Yet in each country that Islamists come into power, it is exactly the minorities who get on their radar. If you are living under a dictatorship, all of the horror aside, unless you're a political opponent, which is a very big unless, I must say, unless you're an explicit political opponent, this tends not to come towards you. But if you're a minority group in a country ruled by Islamists, this will come for you. If you are a Christian in Egypt, life is better for you under Sisi, and it was better for you under Mubarak than it was under Morsi. Under Morsi, tens of thousands of Christians fled Egypt because they saw and they knew what was coming, and they were already feeling the start of it. Secondly, the case of women. Always, the Islamists cannot resist the temptation to repress women. They can't, anywhere you look on this. Even Tunisia, take Tunisia, which has already come up, the so-called best case example. In the New York Times itself, Roger's own paper, in February, quoted a set of women's rights activists in Tunisia who said Ben Ali was pro-woman, and that the current administration is not. I mean, it's amazing one has to say pro-woman. It's like saying a person is pro-human being or something. It's sort of a bizarre thing to be. But at least people should credit the fact that the Islamists who seek to control and partially control Tunisia are a worse deal for women than Ben Ali was. And finally, for Muslims themselves, the Islamists, when they are in control, are a catastrophe. Why? Very quickly. Because the whole notion of the Islamist ideology is that they carry out takfir on their fellow Muslims. They say, we know, we are the ones with the answer, we are the ones with the truth, we are the Muslims, you are the ones who are not. That is a catastrophe for these countries. It suppresses every possibility of genuine liberal Muslim resistance to these totalitarians. For all of these reasons, and for many more, I wish today, ladies and gentlemen, that you will do that very difficult thing and put up your hands for dictators, not because we love them, not because we admire them, but because we recognize that in the motion given today, they are better than the disgusting and awful alternative of the Islamists, which are the worst thing of all. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker and the second speaker against the motion, reminding you again the wording, better dictators than elected Islamists. Our second speaker against is India's former ambassador both to Uzbekistan and to Turkey and has represented his country diplomatically in Pakistan as well. He's now a columnist for a rival paper, so I won't even mention it, and a respected foreign policy expert. Here to make the case against the motion, please welcome M.K. Bhadrakumar.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. Ladies and gentlemen, right at the outset, let me make this point very clear that there is a key word, elected. Now, that is a terribly important description. These are not people who have appeared from thin air. We are talking about people who have been elected. And there is a distinction between these people and a fugitive hiding in the caves of the Tangled Mountains of Tora Tora, sneaking into Abbottabad, picked up by the US SEALs, years later, or an one-eyed mullah dreaming about going back to Kabul sitting in Quetta. We are talking about people who have been put through the test of democratic elections. By any reckoning, these are people with a mandate. Now, this is very important to be understood right in the beginning because there is a lot, this has become a pejorative term, Islamist. You are describing them as barbarians and you are invoking a whole slice of history going back to the Crusades when you discuss these people. Now, it's important that we must go for empirical evidence instead of talking in thin air. Now, which are the countries where in this entire period of several decades since World War II that Islamists have been elected to power? Starting from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, you come to the 90s for the first time that they were elected. This was in Tajikistan, bringing the bloody Tajik civil war to an end in 1996. The Islamist Party of Tajikistan got elected and became a part of the coalition government. Then you come all the way to Turkey, the victory of the AK Party in 2002 and 2004, Mr. Erdogan. And then the other part of it that we are talking about is all in the context of Arab Spring, which is, there is a lot of it's a surreal topic. It has to be discussed separately. This is not mainstream discussion at all, Arab Spring. Now, you look at the empirical evidence. In Tajikistan, they put aside their Kalashnikovs. When they came to power in Dushanbe, they held economic portfolios. They attended to social problems, but then they were evicted from power because they were becoming a real challenge to the apparatchiks who were in power in Dushanbe up until then. In 2002, when AK Party got elected, what was the history behind it? Once, twice before the Islamist Party was elected to power, it was not allowed to rule. When I went to Turkey as ambassador in 1998, just a few weeks before that, Erdogan was locked up in a cell in Istanbul and the key was thrown away. Why? Because he had the audacity to recite a Quranic verse at a public meeting. And then he came to power through a democratic mandate. He came to power in 2004. Then in the next election in 2009, he enhanced his majority and he polled 51% votes in the election in Turkey. Now, how many democratic countries you can get a mandate like that? And certainly, it is not as if Turkey comprises 51% Islamists. A lot of liberal Democrats all jumped into the fray, AK Party's bandwagon, and they supported him wholeheartedly. The corporate industry supported him wholeheartedly. Why? Because he had a brilliant track record by the time he had piled up. What was the track record? One, He pushed more sincerely than anyone Turkey's cause for European Union membership. He launched a democratization program which was commended by Europeans. He opened up the economy, and Turkey scaled heights of prosperity that it has never known in its history. And finally, he established once and for all civilian supremacy. Turkey had a functioning democracy, but where the defense minister sat behind the army chief in the NATO countries in Brussels, he established civilian supremacy in Turkey. Now, this was Erdogan's track record. His track record had nothing to do with Sharia law. No, we must go for empirical evidence. And when someone said earlier that all Islamists at the end of the day are alike, Osama bin Laden and Erdogan, I don't buy it. Now, he has shown his democratic temper, and as he has said repeatedly, if there is a dissenting voice, wait for next year. Not one, not two, 3 elections Turkey will face, starting from municipal election in March. Contest the election, throw me out of power. But he is confident that he will regain his mandate. Now, in democracy, there has to be a touchstone. That is the mandate that you have, the will of the people as it is exercised. You can't have, you must have a level playing field for them. In Egypt, what is happening is when Morsi got again 51% vote, but he has been thrown out of power because he is introducing again a paradigm into Middle East, and Egypt is a locomotive for the region. A paradigm into the Middle East which makes the autocratic regimes uneasy. And look at what has happened, the irony of it. These moderate Islamists, the Muslim Brotherhood, there is a witch hunt against them, but the Noor party, the Salafis, are part of the current establishment, the military junta. Now look at it. There is a lot of politics in it. The politics is very much there. You must understand this. That like in the Latin American continent in the time of the Cold War, you whipped up communism as the specter that was haunting and justified dictatorships. Now all over Latin America, you have leftist governments which are wedded to socialist ideology. Brazil, the most successful story in Latin America, its president is a former guerrilla leader. Now, what has been their track record? Give them a break. You know, democracy, ultimately there is the alchemy of democracy. It changes people. Once they come into power, something happens. When they carry the mandate of the people, something happens. So it's a wrong thing to say that if they are allowed to continue, then they will immediately impose Sharia law. There will be creeping Islamization. Let's have an open mind. Give them a break. Turkey has shown, Turkey is the only example today in modern world where they have shown that given an opportunity, they will perform better than this so-called liberals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think the battle lines have been very clearly drawn for speeches absolutely to the point. You've heard the cases made for and against this motion. Now, let's now open it up and hear contributions from the floor. Microphones will be going around. If we can get a microphone to the gentleman at the back, keep your hand up so that the person who's bringing the microphone will do that. So one to the person at the very back. And is there anyone over here? Because we've got someone with a microphone over here. Okay, if you could come to the person here on the left, and we'll then pass it to you. So gentleman at the back.
Hello, I am Anup Saraf. My question is, aren't we a very big fan of democracy? When Einstein suggested the theory of relativity, he was the only one in the world saying that. So aren't we a great fan of democracy? And is the Arab world prepared for the democracy? Are they really prepared for democracy?
Is who really prepared for democracy?
What?
Did you? I couldn't hear you asking you. You said, "Is who prepared for democracy?"
Is Arab world really
Erdogan.
prepared?
Thank you. There, I've got it. And who's got the microphone next? Somebody's already got it. Gentleman here. Yeah. Off you.
My question is to Mr. Kohen. You know, I heard Mr. Moraes saying that, giving a very easy example of Musharraf, but I find it very simplistic and little cute, because if you see it's unimaginable to think of Saddam, if he had been alive, what would have happened to Middle East. So like Mr. Bhadrakumar said, that it gets into the DNA. Once you get elected, you change. But if you have dictators, you can have a dictator who can start playing with a dirty atomic bomb. So have you thought of those consequences? So I personally feel that it is better to have elected Islamists who will, it'll get into their DNA and slowly change.
Okay.
Your thoughts, Mr. Kohen?
Thank you. Why don't you pass the microphone to the gentleman next to you, and then we'll bring the microphone to the man with the holding up a white piece of paper. I do want to ensure something like a gender balance, if I can. So if any women have questions, we've got somebody there. If we can get the microphone to the lady there. Well, you've got it now, so you begin your question, and then we can... You first, then you. As brief as you can. Yeah.
Hello. Can you hear me? I find this my name is Pawan Malhotra. I find this topic very paradoxical because all Muslim dictators are fundamentally Islamists. General Ziaul Haq, this is for all panelists for the observation. General Ziaul Haq, he revoked the Sharia law. Pervez Musharraf was very close to the fundamentalists. Morsi was a Islamist, was about to become a dictator. Your observations on that?
Thank you. And the woman there. Thank you.
My question is to the panelist. What is your definition of Islamist? Are they being stereotyped? What is your definition of Islamist? Are they being stereotyped?
Are they being stereotyped? Thank you. Let's put that immediate question. I'm going to come round for more questions. Hold on. We'll get you in the next round. Daniel Pipes, what is the definition of Islamist that you're working on?
As I suggested earlier, the definition I use is a Muslim who looks to the Islamic law as a solution to all life's problems, private and public, who seeks complete and severe application of Islamic law as a solution to the Muslim problems in the world, who seeks to build a caliphate. So the emphasis on Islamic law, on Sharia, Nizam-e-Mustafa, as Ziaul Haq put it.
So to clarify with your first remarks, anybody who would like to see Islamic law as the basis for governance meets the standard, as you put it in your opening remarks, of a Nazi or barbarian?
Anyone who seeks to revert to a medieval law code and reject modernity, and to do so in this extreme and in many cases violent fashion, is a barbarian. And the movement, the Islamist movement, I believe, is quite closely analogous to the Nazi or the fascist movement and the communist movements.
All right, Roger Cohen, do you want to respond to that, but also to the question that was very specific about Erdogan and how, are you really confident he's ready for democracy, given, for example, there were those protests, democratic protests, pro-democracy protests, that were pretty ruthlessly crushed just last year?
Well, the notion, in answer to Daniel Pipes, that the AKP in Turkey or Erdogan himself is trying to build a caliphate or plotting some sinister Nazi-like takeover, I find it preposterous. Is Turkey a perfect Jeffersonian democracy? No, of course it's not. But if Egypt in the next decade or 15 years could get somewhere close to where Turkey is today, I would certainly take it. I'm troubled by Erdogan's imprisonment of many journalists, alluded to by Douglas. I'm troubled by the hubris that led to the Gezi Park protests. But it's precisely because Turkey is a democracy and is a relatively open society that you got the pushback from the coasts in Turkey against the Anatolian heartland. And it's this give and take which defines democracy. And in answer to your question, sir, yes, it does get into the DNA. It's precisely in this way that Ennahda is being moderated by power, that the AKP has been moderated by power. And I suggest that if Morsi had been able to see out his term, and if he'd been thrown out at the urns, at the ballot box, rather than by the army, you might have begun to see the same sort of process happening there. He made many mistakes, but the deep state in Egypt, the army, the security services, they were blocking him at every turn. Why did gasoline, suddenly return to the streets of Cairo the day after he was pushed out of power?
Douglas Murray, why don't you pick up the question about a dictator could, for example, pose a threat with dirty bombs? It's not as if elected Islamists hold the monopoly on posing a threat to their neighbours.
Oh, no, absolutely. And
Absolutely, and the case of Saddam Hussein, which I referred to earlier, would be a good example that would back you up on that. It's not the contention of this side that just as there are varying degrees of Islamists that we've talked about today and the speed at which they wish to institute their desires, so there are different types of dictators, and some, as it were, feel more outgoing about their ideas than others, and pose a much bigger problem than others. That's undoubtedly the case.
I like the use of outgoing, as if the big problem with Saddam Hussein was that he was an extrovert. It's a sort of nice way of putting it. Go, briefly, if you can, and then I want to put something to the ambassador.
Could I just, the gentleman at the back who said, is the Arab world ready for democracy? I mean, this is one of the great sort of discussions of our time. My answer is, generally speaking, yes, but only if the institutions are in place to make that a real democracy and not one which can be taken over by the most organized parties, which have tended to be the Islamist parties. And very quickly, part of that is our fault. Most of the Islamist parties that have taken over in the recent years since the Arab Spring began have, apart from anything else, had their headquarters in London. We helped the Islamists in their years of exile, and we never did anything meaningful for the genuine secular and other liberal Muslim voices across the region. And I think that it will be seen as a historical catastrophe.
Okay, let's go for another round of questions. I'm going to bring the ambassador in a moment. Let's, gentlemen there have been waiting patiently, and then it'll be the lady over there. Yeah. I can't hear you yet, but I know it's going to be worth waiting for. Tell you what, while we're sorting that out, why doesn't the lady here go? Yeah. Oh, we're having it's spreading, this problem. Have another go. No, it's not working yet. Somebody else has a microphone. I think, there's a third person who's got a microphone already. Is it audible now? Is yours now working?
Apparently.
Good, off you go, yeah.
All right, my question is this. First of all, I must say this entire debate has understated the point that Mr. Bhadra Kumar brought up about how the keyword is elected here. So when the proposition is trying to convince us that they are so anti the people, as in the elected Islamists are so bad for the people of their own country, I'm telling you the people are smart enough to choose because they do have the right to choose, and if they're really so bad, they'll be voted out. Secondly, this three benefit model that Mr. Douglas Murray proposed about how there are three...
Sorry to interrupt you. That was a point you made, quite a good one, but can we now have a question from you for the panel?
See, my basic question is three advantages that Mr. Murray listed. Advantages to women, advantages to minority, and advantages to the Muslim of that country, as in advantages of dictators over elected Islamists. I am telling you that none of these hold true by the simple fact that dictators are not mutually exclusive from Islamists. Right. And in fact, if dictators are Islamists, they're only Islamists with more power.
Okay, I'm not hearing a question yet. The point has been noted, thank you. We're going to get for a question. Yeah.
Okay, my question is, like in today's globalized world, I think there's too much of monoculturalization of everything, of brands, music, and thought process. So it looks to me, even in the political process also, in the governance, there is too much emphasis on democracy. Are not we losing out on different forms of governance and the diversity in governance when we're just putting the two extremes, either the dictators or maybe the democracy? So it looks like more of a push, from the Western worlds to push the democracy throughout. Maybe they are not right for it. And there might be a case of benevolent dictators. And is the Iraq of today without Saddam Hussein is better than what it was with Saddam Hussein?
Okay, thank you. We'll bring a microphone to you. Can we bring the microphone to this gentleman here? I'm only excluding you because I called on you twice yesterday, so I think I've given you a fair crack of the whip. Let's hear from this gentleman here. Yes.
My name is Zia Haq. I write for the Hindustan Times. Now, I'm rather astonished at the level of hypocrisy about those who even argue that dictatorship can be better under any circumstances. Now, my question is, if you're going to argue that dictators can be better, then don't you think, by implication, you're arguing that democracy can be dispensable? Now, if that is the case, how would you make the case for democracy with China, for example?
Excellent, thank you. Exactly, that's the model question. Thank you. Lady over here. I'm not making a judgment of the content, just got straight to a question. Lady here, we're holding the microphone. Yeah. And then we'll bring the microphone here. Yep. Is there another? Ali, there we are. Could you bring the microphone? Keep your hand up, the person.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you. My question is rather direct. A case had been made that in case of minorities, probably a dictatorship is a better idea. However, I think that it's a question. Don't we think that democracy, by its very definition, has a case of higher representation, and that democracy has a larger scope of negotiation, even for minorities, as compared to a complete dictatorship? Thank you.
Good. While these are fresh in our mind, I'm going to put these questions, which I think are directed to this side of the table, and then I'll take some more. So just very quickly, to you, Daniel Pipes, the worry expressed by the questioner was that this will send a message that democracy is dispensable if we prefer dictators in some cases, and therefore what message would that send to the likes of China?
Democracy is the ideal, but as we have reiterated time and again, we are not choosing between democracy and dictatorship. We're really choosing between two types of dictatorship. The elected Islamists are, in fact, autocratic. Some of them go right to it, some of them go more slowly to it, but they all are eventually dictators.
So your point is that democratic Islamism is a contradiction in terms. It can't happen.
It is an oxymoron, yes.
Okay. To you, Douglas Murray, the question was, the point made by the questioner there was that democracy by its nature allows for representation and therefore by definition must be better for minorities, women, etc. Yet your side has been arguing that minorities will always be ill-served by Islamism. Is there a tension there?
In a free and open democracy where everyone can say what they want without fear or prejudice, then yes, obviously that would be the case. People argue their own confessional and other interests. But the point that we've been making is that in an Islamist government, even one that is elected, that freedom does not exist. And I think that's demonstrated from each of the countries I've cited today. And very quickly, if I can give another example, the whole challenge for those of us who are friends of democracy and fans of democracy and advocates of democracy is what you do when you face parties who seek, in some cases, not all of the cases we've mentioned, but seek one vote once. You know, there was a communist party that stood in Eastern Europe a little while ago with the slogan, "Vote for us and never vote again." They didn't get in, thank goodness. But that may as well have been the slogan for Hamas in Gaza. When were those elections? 2007? Why has there not been an election since? Oh, whoops, they forgot.
Okay, one person, one vote, one time, as the slogan goes. The ambassador wants to come in quickly. Please, if you've got a question, keep your hands up. And those people with microphones, let me catch my eye so that I can direct you to the thing. So we're going to go next to the gentleman at the very far back, but not before we've heard from the ambassador. Yeah.
Jonathan, one small point I need to make. You know, when you speak about minorities, you know, you find the threshold of political tolerance. Now, for the first time in Turkey, for example, the Kurdish issue is being addressed. And no other government in the past had the audacity to address it like this, in terms of autonomy, in terms of recognition of Kurdish identity. This is a highly emotive issue, which is, you know, taken something like 30,000-40,000 lives in that country. Now, this Islamist government is the one which is addressing it. And now the current bazaar gossip in Istanbul is that they might be a coalition partner for Erdogan in the next election.
Thank you. We've got 8 minutes left. 5 of those are going to go to closing remarks from here. So I'm going to try and get as many of you in as I can, but please, the more concise you are, the more voices we'll get. The lady here who's already got the microphone, if you stand up, make your point, then we'll pass the microphone around your table with it, as much as we can, and then we'll go to the gentleman in the back. So, yeah.
I'm Preeti Davra. I write for Mint Asia. My question is about a speaker this evening who's Imran Khan. And
should we save that question for him when he's here then?
No, I'd like to actually get Roger Cohen's opinion on what he thinks of Mr. Khan and, you know, his politics, because he's trying to co-opt and speak to the people that everybody is trying to brandish as extremists and terrorists. But it seems to be that now even the US is speaking to the Taliban. So just want to get your views on that.
Okay, thank you. Why don't you pass, while we're waiting, if you pass the microphone to the gentleman here who's been waiting, and while we're doing that, we'll hear from the man at the back. At the very back, yeah.
Hello, I'm Samir Kayasa. We talk of universal brotherhood, and coming back to the point of DNA, don't you think it is an evolutionary process? One cannot go from a complete dictatorship to a democracy, and it would have to be built into the DNA to get the benefits.
Okay. Thank you. And you've got the microphone. When you finished, I recognise the Turkish ambassador, I think, so we'll go to him afterwards. Let's hear your question and pass the microphone back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I really found it very profound to put dictators like Franco and Hitler beside people now we have like Erdogan, Ali Zaidan, and Monsef Marzouki in Tunis. So the second thing, if you say elected, what about the principle of democracy for respecting the electorate who brought that guy?
Okay. Could you pass the microphone to the gentleman behind you? We'll hear from him. And I know there's somebody there, and there's a microphone near you. So we're going to coming to the end now of the questions.
Thank you. Thank you for this fascinating discussion. I think it's very relevant, of course. I believe that, first a comment, if I may, very shortly. I believe that both sides would have made a better case if they submitted that actually the Turkish experience is an exception to much of this debate. They could have started from the point that, for instance, that the party itself, the ruling party itself, doesn't define itself as an Islamist, but a conservative Democrat. And that is throughout their party program.
Ambassador, are you then saying that it is wrong to define Erdogan as an Islamist?
Well, I'm saying is that the Islamist is used as an umbrella framework, and he himself doesn't consider himself as a political Islamist. He's defining himself and the party itself as a conservative Democrat, along the lines of some of the European parties. And I do have a question, nonetheless. But I think the real question to be addressed is, should there have been a stronger support, international support, by the European Union, by the United States, in favor of people who are democratically elected?
Right.
Have we gone into a phase where this is no longer important? So has the balance, our intellectual balance, tipped in favor of more Islamophobic clans?
Very interesting. Thank you for that. Person's been waiting there. The person who's already got the microphone has been waiting in the corner. There we are. This is going to have to be our last one, I'm afraid. I apologise to everyone who I haven't been able to get to, including those who waited so patiently. I'm sorry. Final thought from you. Yes. Yes, is it working? I'm waiting. No, the microphone's not working. Seconds are ticking down. I know you've got your hand up, and I'm sorry I wasn't able to get to you. But if it's not going to work, we may have to move quick. Oh, somebody's running across. It's all high energy here. The room veritably buzzing. Here we go. Yeah.
Hello.
Still not working.
Is it audible?
Yeah, but now it's working. Yes.
Okay. This is Amardeep. I have some experience of working in Oman, and my question is, and I've seen the country the way it has progressed under the current dictator or the Sultan in last 30 years. So now my question is whether it's good for a country to have a dictator during the phases when it is growing and have a democracy when it wants to stabilize and maintain, because one doesn't know if one is going to always get a good dictator or not.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to pull these together. We're now going to have closing remarks from all of our speakers. We're going to do them in the reverse order, so it means that the first word will go to you, Ambassador. Yeah, you stay where you are. And I just want to put to you a couple of observations that maybe there needs to be a staging post between dictatorship and democracy, and perhaps that elected Islamist governments might be that in-between stage. What do you think? But make your closing remarks.
See, the safest thing is to allow free play for Islamists in a democratic environment. Having lived and worked in Pakistan, I can tell you that Pakistan allowed this to happen. And they never polled more than a clutch of seats. They never managed to get elected in Pakistan. So, it's a wrong notion itself that if Islamists are allowed to contest the elections, they will invariably win. Why they are winning is because the democratic space is not available in a number of these countries and they are better organized. That's what happens. Number two, what happens, it's equally necessary to think, what happens if we deny this democratic space to them? We will drive them to the caves of Torah. Now, that is the alternative. Do you want it to happen? And that is a recipe for war ad infinitum. This war on terror.
Thank you.
So I think
they have a legitimate role to play because it's in our interest to allow them to have a role to play.
Thank you. Douglas Murray, a closing remark from you, and particularly address the question, it was put by both the Ambassador and the gentleman here, that is there perhaps an eroding support? What happened to the Western support for democracy, particularly in the last decade, when now people like you are going around saying sometimes it's better to have dictatorship?
Well, I think that what happened was that, among other things, people saw the result of elections like that in Gaza, like that in Egypt, and got rightly worried. Two things very quickly. One is this issue of Erdogan, since it came up. I mean, you say, with all due respect, you say that he doesn't consider himself an Islamist. Well, lots of people don't consider themselves bad people. Lots of people don't consider themselves fat. You know, I mean, lots of people don't consider themselves lots of things. It doesn't mean when the evidence is there that one shouldn't observe it. And Erdogan's well-known statement about using democracy like a tram, and when it gets you to your stop, you get off, is not something we're going to forget easily, and nor should we. Finally, this issue of democratic space. I have a fair amount of confidence that, yes, in a free and genuinely open election, in a country that was ready in the way that many countries have been in recent years, like Indonesia, yes, the Islamists do not do well. But the challenge we all have in front of us at the moment is what you do in those countries, like those that have just come out of the dictatorships in so-called Arab Spring countries, what you do with those countries when the organized people are precisely the people who are anti-democracy in the long term, but want to use it for their own ends in the short term. That is not an insignificant challenge for us. There is no easy answer to this. It's just that our side is saying that in this choice, you can choose the devil of the dictators, or you might have to choose the very deep blue sea of the Islamists. But it's not a nice choice.
Thank you. Final remarks to you, Roger Cohen. You might want to address the question about Imran Khan, or you may want to express your doubts to his face later on. But the other question that came over there was, is it perhaps right sometimes that you need dictatorship when a society and an economy is growing? But whatever closing remarks you'd like to make, Roger Cohen.
I'm not an expert on Imran Khan or Pakistan, but in general I believe very strongly that you can't cherry pick in a democracy. And if Imran Khan wants to go out and make his case, he should be able to go out and make his case. We in the United States might prefer that the Tea Party not participate in an election. Perhaps there are people who think it would be a good thing in Israel if the Shas, extremist religious party, did not participate. But that's not what democracies are like. If you exclude 20% of the population because their beliefs don't happen to coincide with yours, then your democratic system is not going to go very far. Our opponents came up with the idea of one vote once. Well, how about the Assads for 42 years, Gaddafi for 40 years, Ben Ali for 30 years? This sounds to me a lot worse than allowing democratic processes to play out. But my fundamental and final point is this, and it's very much affected by what I saw in 2011. I think from the other side, you're basically hearing a pessimistic view of humanity, and I don't hold that view. There was a lot of hope in the streets of Egypt, Libya, Tunisia. There was a lot of coming together between different parts of society that have been driven apart over decades by dictators. Is it a simple road from there to a smoothly functioning democracy? No, but it's the only road worth taking.
Thank you very much. Final remarks to you, Daniel Pipes. I want you to address two things that came up. The first is the notion that democracy has a taming effect. So they may begin as more extreme, but they moderate once in power. And also this, you were close to former President George W. Bush. Democracy, he argued, was the panacea, the solution for the Middle East and elsewhere. The suggestion has been raised that, in a way, you support, people can have the vote so long as they vote the right way.
First, let me correct if I misspoke before, that I meant to say that we should always support the secular liberals. It is my hope to get the Muslim world to be modern and democratic, and I see this happening through the liberals, through the seculars, through the moderns, not through either dictators or Islamists. Let me be very, very clear about this. Now, Mr. Cohen has kindly called my argument intellectually preposterous. So I thought maybe I will address that in my final remarks. His own argument, however, is based on mischaracterization and error. He first of all mischaracterized what I said. I did not say that it is best form of government for Muslims. I said it is the better of the two. It seems to be a rather simple distinction, but let me make it clear. I'm not advocating for dictatorship. I am saying it's better than the even worse prospect of Islamism. He said that I believe that dictators are the way to reform. No, but they're a less bad way to reform than the Islamists. He said that I am arguing that they're more stable. I'm not saying that. As for errors, I cannot believe that a correspondent for the New York Times actually thinks that Morsi won more than half of the vote in Egypt a couple of years ago. A preposterous notion. I cannot believe that a correspondent for the New York Times doesn't know that the Arab Spring, so-called, began 3 years ago, not 2 years ago. Get your facts right, Mr. Cohen. Get your facts right before you start arguing. As for the final point about democracy and the notion that it can be tamed, that Islamism can be tamed, we see quite the reverse. Again, look at Turkey. Mr. Erdogan began very calmly and quietly and cautiously, but as time has gone on, he's become more arrogant, more assertive, and has repulsed many in his country. And I think this is the general trajectory that we can expect from the Islamists, to become more assertive and more imposing their will and more autocratic over time.
And on that point, effectively you're saying to people, you can have the vote so long as you vote the right way?
You can look, democracy is not a suicide pact. And if they're anti-democratic factions, such as the Nazis, the communists, and the Islamists, it is perfectly valid, as what they're doing now in Egypt, to exclude them from the democratic process, because they will undermine it and destroy it.
Thank you. We've had our closing remarks. We've had a very spirited debate here. Let's do that final thing, a show of apologies again to people I couldn't call on time. As I said yesterday, a finite resource, in this context anyway. Let's just have a final show of hands. All those in favour of the motion that it is, or I'll use the wording, better dictators than elected Islamists. Please raise your hands if you're in favour of that proposition. Look around you, you can see it has gone from a smattering to a slightly larger smattering. All those against that motion, better dictators than elected Islamists. And those who remain on the fence? So I would say the motion has been soundly defeated. It only remains for you to join me in thanking our four speakers, Daniel Pipes, Douglas Murray, Professor Badra Kumar, and Roger Kerry. Many thanks. And back to the Roger.
Thank you very much to Jonathan Friedland for conducting that session really beautifully. I'd like to now request Mr. Sanjay Narayan, Editor-in-Chief, Hindustan Times, to please present mementos to our speakers. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We just quickly make the changes on the head table and we move on to our next session, which is on trimming the world.
Lead 1 billion believers. Shape the nation's future. Shine on the global stage and inspire a generation with their leadership. GMR presents CNN IBN Indian of the Year 2013 in partnership with Hindustan Times.
UPA's fortunes are set to decline.
Some of the figures on Karnataka, Rajasthan, a bit exaggerated.
ये मैं, ये यूसुफ, लंगोटिया यार सी मेरा। लाहौर में हमारे घर के सामने एक बड़ा बाग था। उस बाग का गेट बाबा आदम के ज़माने। रोज़ शाम को हमने वहाँ पतंगे उड़ानी और उसके बाद जाके यूसुफ के दुकान से झझरिया चुरा के खानी।
झझरिया?
और मेरा साहब नमस्ते।
नमस्ते, मेरी पोती मुंबई वाली।
और बेटे क्या हाल चाल है?
बचपने की तंग गली फिर से कूदे फांदे छोटी छोटी मीठी चोरी गांठ लेके बांधे।
Please be seated, ladies and gentlemen. Our next session deals with Trimming the World, featuring Dr. Arya M. Sharma, Professor of Medicine and Chair in Obesity Research and Management, University of Alberta. Dr. Anjali Mukherjee, nutritionist and founder director, Health Total. And Dr. Susie Orbach, psychoanalyst, writer and journalist. Chairing the session is Dr. Mufassal Lakdawala, founder, Center of Obesity and Diabetes Surgery, head of department at Saifi Hospital, Mumbai. May I request all of you to please be seated, ladies and gentlemen. We're on to our next session. Please be seated. Thank you. Please be seated. Dr. Lakdawala.
Thank you, and good afternoon to you, everyone. Well, trimming the world, that's this session. So, obesity, and what is obesity? Obesity is not only a weighty problem, literally, but it's a massive issue. Today, as we speak, obesity is doubled more than twice since 1980s. There are 1.4 billion people who are overweight or obese. Out of these, 200 men and 300 women are obese. There are more children today becoming more and more fatter. And is it such a massive problem? Because these are all people who are dying. So someone actually said that obesity is all about being slightly chubby and slightly fat. Well, it's gone beyond that. Today, obesity causes more health diseases and risks than any other thing that we've known. Obesity causes type 2 diabetes, hypertension, sleep apnea, infertility, cut along the psychological problems. So, should we be doing something about it? Well, we all do know that in India, like cricket, everybody knows how to play better than Sachin Tendulkar. So obesity, everybody seems to have that one answer, that is how to treat that obesity. But as my esteemed panel of experts out over here will speak to you later, that it is not such a easy solution. Obesity is a lifelong disease. It lives with you for the rest of your life, and unless you do something about it, it's not very, very easy to solve. Why is it such a bigger problem? In India today, obesity coupled with this new epidemic of type 2 diabetes, or diabesity as it's called, is killing more people. Every 10 seconds, someone dies of a diabetes-related death. Today, there are more traumatic, amputations because of diabetes than because of trauma. So, how do we solve this problem? Well, after all my esteemed speakers, and as I introduce them to you, will probably try and teach you and tell you as to how we can tackle this problem. The only reason after this panel that all of you who are overweight or obese would go out and still continue to be overweight and obese is because you are harder to kidnap. All right? So I would like to introduce my first speaker on the panel. That would be Dr. Arya Sharma. Dr. Arya Sharma is a very, very well-known speaker. He is the professor of medicine and the head of obesity research from the Alberta University, Edmonton. He also is one of the first guys to get the obesity scale and scoring system, the Edmonton scoring system, if you've heard of it. So please welcome Dr. Arya Sharma.
Well, thank you, Muzaffar, and distinguished guests. It's a real pleasure to be back in Delhi. I actually graduated from high school in Delhi back in 1977, and then unfortunately I had to leave the country because I wasn't a good enough student to get into medical school, and I had to go back to Germany, where my mother comes from, to actually go to medical school and complete my medical training. And here's what they taught us about obesity in medical school. They taught us two things. First of all, being fat is not good for you, and if you see a fat person in your clinic, tell them to go lose weight because it'll fix all their problems. And that was pretty much the end of it. What I had to learn in the years of practice is that telling someone who has obesity to simply go and eat less is about as effective as telling someone with depression, you know what, you need to cheer up. Because people actually go and do that. Weight loss is not the problem. A lot of people have lost weight. There are a lot of commercial programs out there that will help you lose weight. They will charge you money. They will provide you with diets and exercises, and they will sell you supplements. But the problem is that once you lose the weight, virtually it always comes back. And it took me a long time to understand why this whole problem is so difficult. What I've learned in my practice and from the research that we've done is that when we think of obesity, it's not a homogeneous condition. It's actually a very heterogeneous condition. There are lots of different reasons why people gain weight. Some of it is, just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. You go to too many of these functions with too many opportunities to have, buffet lunches. You have a problem. But there was lots of other reasons too. There are genetic reasons. There are medical reasons. We're all pressed for time, stress levels, not getting enough sleep, medications you might be on that can promote overeating and weight gain. The consequences of obesity are very, very different for individual people. You can easily find two people who have exactly the same amount of body fat. One person has got diabetes and sleep apnea and all the problems, and the next person does not. We know that there are lots of genetic differences. When we look at the South Asian population, people from India, they develop diabetes and health problems at a much lower body weight than, for example, Caucasians. We also know that the response to treatment is very different among different people. You can do exactly the same diet or the same exercise program, or you could have the same surgical intervention on two people who have exactly the same body weight, and you'll get very, very different responses. So the big question is, of course, why is this happening? What are the main drivers of obesity at a population level? We're still trying to understand that. If I had to make a guess personally, I would say it's time pressures, it's lack of sleep, and it's high stress levels that all contribute to weight gain. Sedentariness is a problem. Not too long ago, people were paid to be physically active. Today, if you want to be physically active, it's going to cost you. It'll cost you time and it'll cost you money. Because obesity, once established, becomes a chronic condition. And what I mean by that is that this is a condition that we don't have a cure for. We've got treatments. There are lots of ways that you can lose weight, but really losing weight is like pulling on a rubber band. If this is your weight, and you can pull, you can diet, you can exercise, you can even get bariatric surgery, and you can get surgery and lose 50 kilos and keep it off for 10 years. But if you went back to the surgeon and said, can you reverse the surgery, that weight's coming back. Surgery is not a cure for obesity, it's a treatment. We don't have a cure for obesity. How do we fix this? Well, I'm sure we'll get into a lot of discussion around policies that we could possibly contemplate about, but here's one thing that I want to share with you. We are still not training health professionals to understand obesity and think of this as a medical condition. I was checking the AIMS website last night. You don't have a professor at AIMS that actually teaches obesity or offers an obesity course. If you don't have the people who can even train medical students to understand the problems that you're up against, how would you expect patients to be able to go to a health professional and get proper treatment for this condition? So it's not a complex issue. One of my colleagues back in Canada said, obesity is not rocket science, it's more complicated. Thank you. So our next speaker on the panel is Dr. Anjali Mukherjee.
Anjali is one of the most famous, well-known names on nutrition, and she's got a whole chain of nutrition clinics. Please welcome Dr. Anjali Mukherjee.
A very good afternoon to all of you. It is really an honor to be standing in front of such a distinguished audience. I want to thank Hindustan Times for inviting me here. So today I'll be talking about the most pressing public health problem, overweight and obesity. So I'll just tell you a bit, share a bit about what I've been doing. I have been watching overweight people become slim almost since the past 3 decades. And I've noticed a couple of interesting things. I've noticed that most people are on a seafood diet. They see food and they want to eat it. They're not really hungry. Overeating has become a national pastime. Another interesting thing I've seen is that most people are not happy with their weight. Are you happy with your weight? How many people are happy with your weight? That's very few, so that's why we're all here. So yet, even if they're not happy with their weight, they would go ahead and order a double cheeseburger, large fries, and a diet soda. It probably makes them feel less guilty somewhere. So the transition from a starving world into an obese one is happening with tremendous speed. There are more people who are dying of eating too much food than too little. This is because overweight is associated with a whole lot of terrible health consequences like heart attack, stroke, cancer, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, basically premature death. Being obese is like committing slow suicide. And as if all this was not enough, studies now show that it's not only important how much you weigh, but where that fat is located. Most Indians tend to store fat around their belly region, which is called visceral fat. And this kind of fat is known to be more harmful than subcutaneous fat, which is fat beneath the skin, because it precipitates type 2 diabetes and heart disease at a much lower weight, which means that if you are 7 to 8 kgs overweight, and if most of that weight is around your face, your neck, your chest, your arms, your legs, then you may look cosmetically overweight, but it's not going to bother you medically. However, if the same 7 to 8 kgs is located around your abdominal region, then it has more dangerous implications on your health. So, how do we deal with this? What are the action points? Food prices can be used to tilt people's choices towards healthier options by applying taxations and subsidies appropriately. For instance, is it possible to increase tax on most junk foods? Is it possible to restrict junk food ads? Make food labeling more clear. Make fresh fruits and vegetables more affordable to the masses. Make whole pulses and whole grains more affordable to the masses so that people can eat more of it. These foods are basically rich in fiber. An increased fiber intake helps to reduce the risk of obesity. The reversing of the obesity epidemic requires that we go back to our traditional diets. For example, the world now recognizes the health benefits of homemade ghee. It raises good cholesterol. Of rice bran oil, it contains oryzanol. It lowers total cholesterol. Of alsi seeds, good for blood thinning. Of haldi, excellent painkiller, anti-inflammatory, good for arthritic patients. Eating sabji roti is good for weight management. especially the rotis made of our traditional attas like jawar, bajri, nachni. Our desi dal has a very low glycemic index, less than 30. Excellent for weight management. A special request to parents. Parents have a crucial role in preventing the obesity epidemic in India. They need to check the food that they give to their children right from a young age. They need to guide the children to do some form of physical activity right from a young age. Schools should ensure that there is healthy food available in the school canteens so that our children can learn to make healthy choices in their formative years. And at least 40 minutes of physical activity should be made compulsory in all schools for all students to prevent childhood obesity. Above all, we need to take personal responsibility towards our weight and health. We choose the food that we put into our mouth. So make healthy choices. Parents who don't eat vegetables should not be surprised if the children don't eat vegetables. You know, a doctor once told an overweight client that I'm going to give you 100 pills to make you lose weight. So the client said, 100 pills? So the doctor said, you don't have to swallow them. Just spill them on the floor twice a day and pick them up one at a time. So the good news is that obesity is preventable. Friends, I'm not alone in my concern that obesity and consequently heart disease and diabetes are a growing national as well as global crisis. I want to leave you with just one important thought, and that is our big problem is not just obesity, but central obesity and the consequence of being even slightly overweight. According to the WHO, globally, the recommended waist circumference for men, if they wish to be healthy, is that it should not be more than 40 inches. And for women, is that it should not be more than 35 inches. But for Indians, as we are more genetically prone to heart disease and diabetes, at a much lower weight, the recommended waist circumference for Indian men, hold your breath,
34.
Is that it should not be more than 35 inches. And for Indian women, if they wish to stay healthy, is not more than 32 inches. The problem is not only that diabetes and heart disease runs in your families, the problem is no one runs in your families. I sincerely hope that more and more people become open to the theory that eating right, not following a diet, eating right, and doing a bit of exercise is the most economical way to manage obesity and its related diseases. Food, like your money, should be working for you and giving you good health, and not those extra kilos. Thank you.
Our next speaker on the panel comes all the way from London, Susie Orbach. She's a psychoanalyst and an author.
And she's also very short, and every podium I'm on, however high my high heels, I can never see over the top of. You don't have a platform, do you? Okay. I want to thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here. I want to reframe some of the remarks of my colleagues, because I want to reframe the remarks of some of my colleagues and talk about this not really as a crisis of obesity, but a worldwide crisis around bodies. Obesity is the affliction of affluent Indians, but it sits side by side with a problem that's equally prevalent, certainly among the affluent Indians, and that's the obsession with thinness. This is no trivial concern at all. This is a very serious concern, and these two issues are often treated separately, seen separately, but I believe they're two sides of the same coin, which constitute a public health emergency. They involve industries which are treating bodies as objects to be mined for profits in different ways. Obesity is now defined as a disease, not a description of size or of adiposity. In 1995, the International Obesity Task Force, who is actually made up of the diet companies, it's important that you know that, prevailed upon the World Health Organization to revise standards for overweight and obesity. Overnight, 300,000 Americans woke up to discover that they were obese. And the force of the market, the diet industry, which of course is part of the food industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the cosmetic surgery industry, piled in to offer treatments to this class of people newly minted as obese. And just to give you a sense of the world figures for obesity, I think George Clooney is probably known here as a world-class movie star. He is in the obese category. So when you hear obese, you need to think both about those people who you would classify as obese because they're very, very large, but you also need to include in them and then question this whole category because it includes people like George Clooney. Now, these industries that have managed to create this notion of obesity are the same industries, along with the fashion and fitness industries, that have been peddling body insecurity to women in particular by implying that their bodies are all wrong and in need of controlling and reshaping, knowing that huge profits can be designated as long as we represent to people and can make them feel that their bodies are not okay. Large industries breed body insecurities. In every part of the world, we're seeing women's dissatisfactions with their bodies, no matter whether they're slim or not. Whether in Sudan, South Sudan, Indonesia, Japan, Brazil, China, Thailand, the USA, Pakistan, India, women and girls in particular look in the mirror and consider themselves to be too large, whatever size they are. They're suffering from a body distortion. And for many of them, what then happens is something that we could classify as an eating disorder. Girls only eating at weekends, throwing up at school, starving themselves, running up and down stairs all of the time, going to the gym obsessively. Now, obesity, I want to argue, can also be seen as an eating disorder. It's the visible, concrete expression of troubled eating. But in its recent incarnation, it is being seen as a disease entity. It's seen as a medical issue, which it might well be. It's seen as a metabolic issue, which it might well be. It's seen as an insulin-related issue, which it might well be. But what is missed in these medicalized accounts of obesity is what's going on when people are eating when they're not actually physically hungry, and what is it that prompts them to do so. Obesity can occur as a result of food restriction, i.e. dieting. The mechanism which acts like a thermostat to speed up and down our metabolism when we eat too much or eat too little can get overworked if we continually restrict food. Diets are continual forms of food restriction, and they work on the diet companies are very successful because they work on the basis of a recidivism rate, i.e. a failure rate, a need to return rate of 97%. That's why diet companies are so successful. And many of the the obese women that I have met say that they were put on diets from the age of 5, 6, 7, and 8, and are in essence poster children for the diet companies. So what I want to suggest is that we need to probe more deeply. We need to understand what's going on when people eat when they're not hungry. and we need to understand the kind of anxiety that now accompanies people's eating, the kind of fear and terror that accompanies an awful lot of people's eating. Food has become, for some, a psychological soother at the same time as it's a source of pain and guilt. It's far removed from the satisfaction of appetite. Food and eating or not eating has become associated with love, with nurture, with rejection, with self-punishment, with managing feelings that have no place. Fat, which is a physical state, is actually also symbolic. It covers feelings or it hides them from the individual as well as from the other. Fat is also a rejection, a way of saying no to those impossible photoshopped images of which we see 10,000 a week, which tell us that we really need to look like a stick. So, in looking to food, whether it's on the overeating or on the undereating side, we need to understand that when people are overeating or they're undereating, they're on a search for a solution. The question is, what is the problem that they're seeking a solution to? So the challenge I would like to ask India is, what is the problem for which in India obesity is seen to be the solution? If we can ask that question, if we can ask the question that way, we can get into the experience of the person and of the culture that now has extremely troubled eating. We can understand what people are endeavoring to do and what the eating is all about. Without that, we risk twirling around with false questions whose answers will be so partial to be of little help. In the meantime, we need social policy, and here I agree with my other speakers, to deal with the perpetrators of Obesity Inc. First of all, we need to prosecute the diet industry. There's no other industry that has a failure rate of 97% that is allowed to operate. We need to take on the food industry, which of course is the diet industry, who takes out the fat out of food and sells us back a bliss point and sells us the non-fat food with plasticizers and rubbish in it. We need to take on the fitness industry, who make millions out of people who are troubled by their bodies and makes them into obsessives rather than deals with their distress. And we need to deal with the beauty, cosmetic, and allied style industries who make our place with our bodies so tortured rather than a pleasurable place to live from. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Susie. This is your best chance, ladies and gentlemen. You've got experts all across in the field of obesity, from medicine to nutrition to psychoanalysts, and eventually, if you need some questions, I'm the surgeon here. So, so please go ahead and ask your questions. Okay, one at a time. All right, we go from the side. And please try and be as brief as you can. Name who you are and ask your question.
Namita Bhandare, formerly fat person. And thank you, Dr. Susie Orbach. I agree with you that an industry which has a 97% failure rate really needs to be shut down. And I've been to every diet doctor in town, but because it was drilled into my head, obesity is now being regarded as a health issue. But it was always, in my 30s, seen as a beauty issue. And I thought I look okay. And I was okay with being fat. And I went to every fat doctor in town and nothing happened. So I thank you for your anti-perspective in that sense. And Dr. Mukherjee, my question specifically to you would be, what is the responsibility of your industry in going on perpetuating this myth that obesity is a beauty issue when it is in fact a health issue?
I don't think we said it's a beauty issue at any point in this discussion. It is a health issue. Health is much more than body weight. Yet, achieving the ideal body weight is the first step to achieving good health. That is largely the whole thing. Well, medically, there are a lot of parameters. There is BMI, there is waist circumference, there is height-weight charts. So there are these reference points, and beyond which one realizes that one puts on weight and then precipitates medical conditions like diabetes and heart disease in our country. So this is what it is. It's more about health. It's not really about beauty. But yes, when you lose weight, you also look good, which is an added benefit.
Yeah. I'd like to just come in. Is this mic working? Yes. I'd just like to come in on the issue of the BMI, because I think it's a totally preposterous issue. And on a reanalysis by Catherine Flegel, who's works at CDC, the Center for Disease Control in Washington. She's reanalyzed the whole world-class, all of the data, and has discovered that the most safe weight, if you want to put it in those terms, is to be in the overweight category at 27.5. So it's a completely spurious measure, and it needs to be really thrown out. We need to contest it, and we need really to understand why the medical journals, the pharmaceutical companies, and the whole industry, Obesity Inc., is involved in perpetuating a myth that is not accurate. The kinds of really large-scale disabling forms of obesity may be something we have to be thinking about. But for the vast majority of people who are wandering around worrying that they're fat and involving themselves in extraordinary treatments, they are doing nothing but undermining their own capacity to look after themselves. And it's an outrage that they're being put through this.
So I totally agree with her that BMI is an easy method to manage your obesity, but like we see it in India, and like Arya said, waist is more significant for the Indians. So waist ratios, but we don't have yet that index to measure obesity. And until such a point of time, I think BMI is the relatively simple one. Yes, you had a question, please.
Hi, my name is Janela Flam, and I'm an expert in what I call pleasurable weight loss. And Susie, I wanted to thank you personally. I read one of your books when I was 18 and in the thick of an eating disorder, and it was the first time I'd ever heard of, the psychology of it. And almost 20 years later, I am with you in sharing these ideas, so thank you very much. My question is about body image, and one of the aspects of the biochemistry of weight loss, as you mentioned, Arya, is the stress response has a huge amount to do with it. And body image, bad body image, creates a stress response. And it can be almost like an autoimmune disease where I hate my body and it just grows and grows and grows. And I really liked your top 3 reasons for obesity. I was very relieved with them. Thank you. So I'm curious to all of you, Susie, but all of you, about how do we help people improve their body image? Weight aside for a second.
Well, I think there are a lot of initiatives going on around that I know, that I'm involved in. I'm part of a group called Endangered Bodies, and we exist in several countries. And there are a lot of initiatives like challenging the fashion industry, teaching people how to pattern cut so clothes can come in all different sizes. I'm working with the British government very closely to help new mums not pass on their eating problems to their babies, so that they don't start having C-sections at 8 months, which is the new fashion, in some fantasy that they won't get fat, as though you're never supposed to be marked by having had a baby, and as though a post-pregnancy body is per se fat. So I think that's an absolutely key area to work, is with new mums, taking on all of visual culture, so that I'm not one for labeling, but so that we get much more variety within visual culture, and helping young people not simply to decode the 200 retouching that happens on every single image that is on every single page of a magazine, let alone what's on Facebook and everything else, but getting them to create their own cultural forms where they actually talk and try to get through. And I mean, I've been working with a lot of young people where they talk about the kind of tyranny that they're living with, and the kind of world where they like to have their body be something that just exists for them and is a source of pleasure rather than absolute sorrow and anguish. So I think there are many different interventions we have to make. And wherever we are, we have to go bang on the doors, and we have to insist that we see a much fuller representation of people as they really are.
Okay, Dr. Arya, would you like to get on?
Yeah, I'd just like to, we tell our patients, you can't measure health by stepping on a scale. It's a number that can guide you, in certain ways in a clinical context, but you cannot step on a scale and decide based on the number you see there whether you're healthy or not. One of the key treatment options that we offer to patients, and in fact a lot of patients in our clinic actually get that, our workshops where they work on self-esteem and body image, which just came up, which is one of the key drivers to everything from unrealistic weight loss expectations to chasing after ideal weights, which I don't even know what that number actually means. In fact, we have more or less abandoned the whole concept of BMI. In fact, the Edmonton Obesity Staging System is something that we came up with because we found that BMI was simply not useful in a clinical context. So I think what you're seeing is an evolution of the field that is happening quite rapidly, and hopefully some of the mistakes that have clearly been made in this field, in the West, will not be repeated in this country. Unfortunately, as I said in my introductory remarks, we are still not teaching obesity to health professionals. So the question is, where do you even go for help to start dealing with any of these issues?
So I'm going to take the prerogative of the chair. Could you just name yourself and keep your question as brief as possible, please? Thank you. So that we can fit in more and more questions, in the session. We've got limited time.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
My name is Pawan Malhotra. It's for all the panelists. In fact, the contradictions on the panel remind me of Mark Twain's quote, "Beware of health articles, you might die of misprint." So I just wondered, there's a sudden blitzkrieg of books on health and articles, and they're using celebrity as the brand ambassador, and each contradicting the other. So whom to believe? But Anjali, I am aware of, but when there are others, and it's become a fashion to come now go to Dr. Lagdawala.
So where's the question here?
Question is whom to believe? There's so many books coming.
Okay, so we get your point. Next, please. Yeah.
Well, the last thing the world needs is another diet book.
Yes. My name is Aditya Gambhir. Hi. My question, very simply in general to the panel, is this from a feminist standpoint, especially the point that Dr. Orbach was talking about how every image is touched up to look to sort of project a certain body type as being the ideal body type. So I can't help but notice that even when this lady asked a question and Dr. Mukherjee was replying, in the end she did fit in that point about how when you slim down you do look better, so therefore that's an added benefit. Who says when you slim down you look better? I say somebody may feel that they look better when they are when they have slightly more weight. So I'm just saying that right now we all of the panelists concur that it's a health issue, not a appearance issue. But my question is, out there in the world, out there in the market, in the advertisements, etc., obesity and weight has become more of an appearance issue. And what is the take of the panelists on that? And how do you stop people from getting into the minds of, especially, you find the fairer sex more sort of ingrained with this sort of mentality in that sense. So how do you counter that, and is that right at all?
So beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. We can't do too much about that. But I think the government, the stakeholders all need to start moving into identifying, like Anjali said, put price tags on diet and various other things. Only then we'll probably get the answers. Yeah, thank you.
So mine is not a question, but probably a suggestion. The panelists mentioned that there should be more taxes on the junk foods, etc. I find that I am a telecom expert, and I have traveled all over the country in the villages where the overweight percentage is very low as compared to the cities. And mostly I find the people, when they get married, they have the tendency to get more weight. So my suggestion would be, instead of putting tax on the fake food, probably you should give some concessions in the income tax to the bracket of people who are absolutely up to the underweight.
Yes, please. So we have a lot of corporates who actually do that. They give more incentives to people who are below a certain BMI. Yes, please. I'll get.
I'm Dr. Veena Agarwal. Just a few quick rebuttals to what everybody's been saying about it being a health issue versus a beauty issue. Even a beauty issue is a health issue because according to the WHO definition, health is not mere absence of disease. It's a state of mental, physical, spiritual, economic well-being.
Yes.
So even if it is a perception of a beauty issue, it is a health issue. So if I perceive it as a beauty issue, I am unhealthy. I have to perceive it in that context. Secondly, about your observation that we don't have curriculums where we teach doctors. How would you suggest we bring in those curriculums in our system of medicine? Are there courses that we can adapt to our, offer to our doctors here, short-term courses, long-term courses? Thirdly, what is Anjali, what is your take on the Ayurvedic principles towards weight loss?
Yes.
And fourth question is, what are the regulatory mechanisms we can put in for the diet clinics that we have, mushrooming of diet clinics at every nook and corner?
Right.
So allow me to start with the curriculum question, because this is something that we are, of course, very interested in. Obesity is complicated. The physiology of how the body regulates things like appetite, reward, how stress levels affect your body weight, your cravings, your food eating behaviors, and what happens when you start losing weight. I mean, those are things that we understand very well, but we don't teach. And it is not difficult to construct that curriculum. It is not difficult to identify what the elements of that curriculum would be. One of the problems we have is that we don't have enough teachers to actually teach that curriculum. And I think that's one of the major challenges that we have, because we have not been training health professionals across the boards, and this is not just doctors. We have just not been training health professionals to address obesity in the same way that you would address other conditions like diabetes or hypertension or other problems that can cause health. Now, this is not to say that everybody who has excess weight is sick and needs to see a doctor. I'm talking specifically about those individuals who have weight-related health issues.
Right. About Ayurveda that you questioned, I think the West also needs to be exposed to Ayurveda just the way they got exposed to yoga and we started following it more just because it came from the West, which originally existed in our country. They need to be exposed to Ayurveda because that speaks about the concept of Vata Kapha, that's constitutional difference between one body type and the other, and Ahar Vihar, which is your diet, is very, very important for control of disease. Here we're just talking about disease and not really just the beauty aspects. It's very important to eat right. Even there's a lot of research which says that eating a lesser amount of calories is anti-aging in nature. So there's a lot of research that is going on in this field. So Ayurveda needs
just
to
a brief comment on her thing on regulation, if you can, because we've just got 2 more questions. We don't have too much
I'm
time.
not a regulation person as such because I'm more of a nutritionist who's into hardcore treatment of obesity. So your question was that these clinics should not mushroom or something like that.
Is there some regulation that can come in to regulate these clinics?
Well, I think everyone should follow what is right and following the right diet, exercising regularly. I mean, there has to be a consciousness that comes in within all the centers that there has to be a certain healthy way to achieve ideal body
So we
weight.
don't have a regulation, but
Yeah,
I think I agree with you.
Yes,
We
I'm not
should get a
regulation
regulation.
person. Yes, we should get it.
Yes, please.
Dr. Seema Sharma, clinical neuropsychologist and psychotherapist. Very much agree with you, Susie, there. And my query or an observation is that when we deal with people who are obese, why is it that we only look more into biology, less into psychology? Why is it that we do not integrate the treatment management programs with, say, cognitive psychology in it? It really helps because the minute we say disease, that very minute the well-being aspect gets hurt, and that needs to be taken into it because the adolescents who are fighting with this problem, they start also having self-esteem and other problems simultaneously, which begins the secondary and the tertiary.
We are almost out of time. Any question?
Doctors do not. Why is it that we do not refer patients or integrate the treatment programs with clinical psychology.
Okay, so all of us agree on the panel that psychology should be a part of obesity management. That's why we've got a psychoanalyst on the panel.
We do not do it.
Okay, the last question, I've just got the last question. I'm going to take this prerogative. I'm sorry, we're really running out of time. Just like in obesity, we run out of options, we've run out of time for questions. Yeah. Just the last question, please.
I'm S.N. Bhargav. My question to Dr. Anjali, you said about the homemade ghee.
Yes.
Now, in olden days and even now, with ghee we put hing as a tadka or chong. Now that was an antidote for cholesterol problems.
Okay.
Now similarly maybe others. Now my question is two. One is that whether we can make aware by advertisements in the cinema halls, etc., about these things you talked. And secondly, is there any study that with the same taste you can get less calories or less harmful fat?
Plenty. One is working on recipes constantly to create, tastier food. We've done a lot of programs on that. And your second thing, one writes articles to create awareness, not really in cinema halls, but we write articles in magazines and newspapers to create health awareness so that all of this is written in articles about haldi, alsi, everything.
So I think we've run out of all time. So what we need to take home from here is that obesity is a disease. It is a lifelong disease. It causes a host of health problems.
You might see it that way. I really don't see it that way, but go
Okay,
ahead.
so we
you
disagree.
can't say we.
Okay, so you need a psychoanalyst to eventually give the last word. Thank you, Susie Urbach. Thank you, Anjali, and thank you, Dr. Arya Sharma.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lakdawala, and to our entire panel. May I request Ms. Sanchita Sharma, Health Editor, Hindustan Times, to please present mementos to Dr. Sharma, Dr. Mukherjee, and Dr. Urbach. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be now taking a tea break of just 10 minutes. Please be back for the discussion on changing mindsets and women. So please be back within 10 minutes. Tea and refreshments in Shah Jahan. Thank you.
दादाजान, दिल्ली से किसी की कॉल है।